The massive alien warship blinked into existence right on top of the human patrol vessel, materializing from the hazy cloak of its damaged Kobali stealth field to loom menacingly over the stunned human crew. Captain Paul Morgan gripped the armrests of his command chair as proximity alarms blared through the human ship's bridge. He barked orders to raise shields and arm weapons, tensing for the coming onslaught from the Kobali battleship that had somehow slipped past border patrols to appear in the heart of human space. But the expected attack never came. The Kobali ship hung motionless, its angular ebony hull pitted and scarred, flickering status lights betraying heavy damage. Paul frowned at the sensor readings. Something was very wrong here. "Sir, we're being hailed by the Kobali vessel," his comms officer reported, voice tight with tension. Paul hesitated only a moment before responding. "On screen." The bridge view screen flickered to life, revealing the strained face of a Kobali commander. Thin trickles of luminous orange blood seeped from a gash on his angular head. "Human vessel. I am Commander Boron of the Kobali ship Vengeance," the alien said, voice raspy. "Our experimental stealth drive malfunctioned catastrophically during a test flight. It overloaded and hurled us across the border before burning out completely. Our engines and main power are offline. We are stranded here and request your aid." Paul stared at the screen, fighting to keep the shock from his face. A Kobali ship, their most advanced stealth craft, helpless in human territory, asking for help from the very species their government considered the greatest threat to Kobali dominance. The implications crashed through Paul's mind in a flash. The Kobali would never have risked crossing the border if they had any other choice. Aiding them was politically impossible. The decades of simmering tensions, the mistrust bordering on outright hostility between their peoples made that unthinkable. It would be seen as treason. But to refuse, to let the Kobali crew die when he could have saved them, it would shatter the fragile truce into a million bloody pieces. And if human scientists could study the Vengeance's revolutionary stealth technology, it would radically shift the balance of power. Paul felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders as the bridge crew looked to him, waiting for his decision. Long-range sensors suddenly wailed new warnings. A battle fleet of Kobali warships had appeared at the edge of scanner range, racing toward them at flank speed. They had to know their stealth ship was here and damaged, and they were coming in weapons hot. Paul clenched his jaw as he stared at the looming hulk of the Vengeance on his view screen. There was no more time to deliberate. What he did in the next few minutes would decide the fate of every soul on both ships, and maybe the future of human and Kobali civilizations. A future that would be written in the flames of war or the light of an impossible new understanding between old enemies. Paul took a deep breath, opened a ship-wide comm channel, and began snapping orders. His mind focused as Paul considered the impossible choice before him. The Kobali battle fleet bore down on their position, weapons primed, and would arrive in minutes. Yet the crippled Kobali ship hung before him, its crew pleading for aid. Paul's next words would shape the future of human-Kobali relations for generations. He punched the intercom. "Chief Stevens, assemble an engineering team. I need you to work with the Kobali crew to repair their damaged stealth drive." "Sir?" Jack's confusion carried through the comm. "You heard me. This is our chance to build a bridge. I won't let old hatred destroy it." He switched channels. "Lieutenant Chen, open a secure line to that incoming Kobali fleet. Appraise them of the situation." Paul met Boron's gaze on the display. "Commander, my people will assist yours with the drive repairs." Surprise and gratitude mingled in Boron's expression. "Thank you, Captain. I will have my engineers coordinate with yours." As the human and Kobali teams worked together, a grudging respect grew between them. Faced with the intricate stealth drive, they found common ground in the language of technology. Wry grins and determined nods replaced suspicious glares. Jack and the Kobali chief engineer Krell hunched over the drive schematics, trading terse suggestions as they troubleshot the damage. Sweat beaded their brows, but an undercurrent of excitement ran through their voices. They were glimpsing the future. "Captain, Chen called out, urgency straining his tone. Admiral Zorn of the Kabali fleet is demanding to speak with you. He's not happy, sir. Paul straightened his uniform. Put him through. Admiral Zorn's angular face filled the view screen. Eyes narrowed. His fleet held position just outside the border, aimed at Paul's lone ship. Captain Morgan, explain yourself, Zorn hissed. Why are you interfering with our stealth ship? Paul met his glare steadily. Admiral, the Vengeance experienced a drive malfunction and requested our aid. We're attempting repairs. This is a Kabali matter, Zorn snapped. You have no right. A klaxon blared on the bridge, cutting him off. Crimson light washed the control panels. Report, Paul barked. Sir, the damaged stealth drive is emitting a rapidly building energy signature, the sensor officer replied, fingers flying over her console. It's interfering with our systems. If it keeps surging... She didn't need to finish. The implication hung heavy in the air. They'd be sitting ducks for the Kabali fleet. Paul turned to Boron. Can your engineers stop it? Boron studied the readouts, face grim. The interference is disrupting our systems as well. We can't shut it down. Captain, I have an idea. Jack's voice crackled over the comm. We can jettison the malfunctioning drive and destroy it at a safe distance. But that would mean sacrificing your stealth technology, Paul finished slowly. Seconds ticked by as Paul weighed the consequences, the interference growing stronger. Sweat trickled down his temple. Then he looked up at Boron and Zorn, a fierce light in his eyes. Commander, Admiral, I propose we jettison the stealth drive together. Let its destruction mark a new era of trust between our peoples. You would demonstrate your willingness to compromise. We would show our commitment to aiding others, even at great cost. Silence stretched taut, the future balanced on a razor's edge. Madness, Zorn sputtered. You ask us to hand over our most advanced technology. I ask you to take a stand for peace, Paul replied firmly. If we always cling to our weapons, our fears, we'll remain locked in this cycle of hostility. This is our chance to forge a better path. Boron met Paul's eyes, a long look passing between them. Then he turned to Zorn. Admiral, I believe Captain Morgan is right. If we are to have a future beyond endless conflict, we must take this first step. Zorn looked between them, the furious lines of his face so slowly, easing. Very well, he said at last, each word a struggle. Jettison the drive. Let us see what future we make of its ashes. As Paul gave the order, as human and Kabali fingers moved over the controls in unison, as the pulsing white heat of the drive vanished into the starry void, a fragile new hope took root between them. Admiral Zorn's face contorted with rage on the screen. Absolutely not! You will return our stealth drive immediately, human, or face the consequences. Paul stood his ground, hands clasped behind his back. Admiral, I understand your concerns, but that drive is a ticking time bomb. If we don't jettison it, both our crews are at risk. Lies, Zorn spat. This is nothing but a ploy to steal our technology. Paul turned to Boron, who stood rigid beside him. Commander, you've seen our teams working together. You know the danger we're in. Please, help me make him understand. Boron's eyes darted between Paul and Zorn. Conflict etched in every line of his angular face. Finally, he stepped forward. Admiral, I believe Captain Morgan speaks the truth. The drive's malfunction is beyond our ability to control. Sacrificing it may be our only option. You would betray your own people? Zorn hissed. No, sir. I would save them. Boron's voice grew stronger. This is an opportunity to build trust with the humans. The alternative is destruction, for all of us. 10 seconds ticked by as Zorn glared at them. Paul held his breath, acutely aware of the crew watching, waiting. At last, Zorn's shoulders sagged. Fine, but Commander, you will provide full schematics and data on the drive's design. We cannot afford to lose everything. Understood, Admiral, Boron replied. Paul nodded to Lieutenant Chen. Work with Krell to prep the drive for jettison. Rig it with explosives. We need to ensure complete destruction. As Chen and Krell coordinated over comms, Paul turned to Boron. Would you and your officers care to witness the detonation from our observation deck? Boron hesitated, then inclined his head. We would be honored. Minutes later, they stood shoulder to shoulder, human and Kobali, watching the gleaming drive drift away on the console. Paul held out the detonator. Together? Boron's hand joined his on the device. They locked eyes, an unspoken understanding passing between them. As one, they pressed the button. The explosion bloomed silently in the void, shattering the drive into countless glittering fragments. For a moment, no one spoke. Then alarms stopped blaring. Consoles flickered back to life. Captain, Chen called. All systems are clear. Interference is gone. Paul let out a long breath. Well done, everyone, but we're not out of the woods yet. He faced Boron. Your ship is still crippled. We need to get you home. Boron's brow furrowed. How? We have no propulsion, and you cannot cross the border. What if we towed you? Paul suggested. My ship's tractor beams could handle it. We'd stay on our side under escort from Admiral Zorn's fleet. Boron considered this. It could work, but we would need assurances. Perhaps a human delegation could accompany us, as our guests, of course. Paul grinned. I think we can arrange that. As teams began preparing for the unprecedented joint operation, tension hummed through both ships. Paul caught Boron's eye. The Kobali commander offered a cautious smile. Let us hope, Boron said softly, that this is only the beginning. Welcome aboard, Paul said, extending his hand to Commander Boron as the Kobali delegation stepped onto the bridge. A hush fell over the human crew, their wary gazes fixed on the aliens. Boron hesitated for a moment before grasping Paul's hand. Thank you, Captain Morgan. We are grateful for your assistance. Paul nodded, turning to address his crew. Listen up, everyone. What we're about to do has never been attempted before. This isn't just about towing a damaged ship. It's about building a bridge between our peoples. I know there's bad blood, but right now we need to focus on the task at hand. He gestured to the Kobali. Commander Boron and his team have already shown their willingness to work with us. Let's return that trust. As Paul spoke, he noticed some of the tension drain from his crew's postures. A few even offered tentative nods. All right, let's get to work, Paul ordered. Initiate tractor beam sequence. The ship hummed as powerful energy beams lanced out, enveloping the crippled Kobali vessel. Slowly, carefully, they began to pull it along. Hours stretched into days as they navigated the treacherous space between their territories. Paul found himself working closely with Boron, Jack, and Krell in the engine room, fine-tuning the tractor beams as they strained against the Kobali ship's mass. Radiation spike ahead, Jack called out, his fingers flying over a console. We need to adjust our course. Krell leaned in, studying the readouts. If we divert power from the aft shields, we can strengthen the tractor beams for the maneuver. Jack nodded. Good call, let's do it. As they worked, Paul noticed the growing ease between the two engineers. Their initial awkwardness had given way to a grudging respect, and now something close to camaraderie. Similar scenes played out across the ship. In the mess hall, human and Kobali crew members cautiously shared meals, exchanging curious glances and hesitant questions about each other's cultures. But not everyone welcomed this newfound cooperation. Lieutenant James Parker watched the interactions with narrowed eyes, his fists clenching at his sides. This is wrong, he muttered to a like-minded crewmate. We can't trust them. We need to put a stop to this before it's too late. Unbeknownst to Parker, similar sentiments were brewing among a faction of the Kobali. Commander Vrock huddled with his conspirators in a quiet corner of the engine room. We cannot allow this alliance to continue, he hissed. It will be the downfall of our people. As they neared the border, both groups set their plans in motion. Parker's team slipped into the tractor beam control room, while Vrock's engineers accessed key systems on the Kobali ship. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout both vessels. The tractor beams flickered and failed, sending the Kobali ship spinning away. At the same time, power surges ripped through its systems, threatening to tear it apart. "What's happening?" Paul shouted, racing to the bridge. "Tractor beams are offline," his helmsman reported. "The Kobali ship is drifting out of control." Paul's mind raced. This was no accident. Someone had sabotaged them, but who? And how could they regain control before both ships were destroyed? He locked eyes with Boron, seeing his own shock and purpose mirrored in the Kobali commander's face. Together they knew they had to act fast to save their crews and the fragile peace they had begun to build. The bridge erupted in chaos as alarms blared and consoles sparked. Paul gripped his chair, steadying himself against the violent shuddering of the ship. "Report!" he barked, eyes darting between screens. Lieutenant Chen's fingers flew across his console. "Massive power surge, sir. Tractor beams are offline. We're losing control." Paul's stomach dropped as he watched the Kobali vessel careen towards them on the main view screen. He punched the comm. "Engineering, we need those thrusters now." "No response from helm control," the navigator called out, panic edging her voice. "We're dead in the water, Captain." Paul locked eyes with Boron, seeing his own fear reflected in the Kobali commander's face. They were out of options, out of time. A proximity alert screamed. Paul braced for impact. Suddenly, the Kobali ship jerked to the side, thrusters flaring. It missed them by mere meters, hull plating scraping past with a horrific screech of metal on metal. "Krell," Boron breathed, a mix of relief and new terror in his voice. Paul's relief was short-lived. The view screen lit up with weapons fire as Admiral Zorn's ships opened up on the now-exposed Kobali vessel. "Shields!" Paul roared. But it wasn't his ship they were targeting. The Kobali vessel shuddered under the barrage, great chunks of hull plating torn away. Boron's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain Morgan, we can't take much more of this. I'm staying to try and regain control. My people are evacuating to your ship. Please, help them." Paul's chest tightened. "Boron, don't do this. We can find another way." "There is no other way. This is our only chance." Paul clenched his fists, knowing Boron was right. He keyed the ship-wide comm. "All hands, prepare to receive Kobali escape pods. Security teams to assist. Medical, stand by for casualties." He turned to his tactical officer. "Target Zorn's lead ships. We need to buy those pods time." The human vessel surged forward, positioning itself between the Kobali pods and the incoming fire. The ship rocked as blasts impacted their shields. "Shields at 60%, Chen called out. "Return fire," Paul ordered. Phaser beams lanced out, scoring hits on Zorn's vessels, but they were badly outnumbered. Jack's voice came over the comm, breathless and strained. "Captain, we've got the first wave of pods. Heavy injuries. We're taking fire in the launch bay." Paul gritted his teeth. "Hang in there, Jack. We're almost—" A massive explosion rocked the ship, throwing Paul to the deck. He scrambled up, tasting blood. "Status." Chen coughed, waving away acrid smoke. "Direct hit to our port nacelle. Warp drive is offline." Paul's blood ran cold. Without warp, they were sitting ducks. The comm crackled. Boron's face appeared on screen, bloodied but defiant. "Paul, I've regained partial control. I can end this." Paul's eyes widened as he realized Boron's intent. "No, Boron, don't." But the Kobali commander's mind was made up. "Get my people to safety, Paul. Promise me." Tears stung Paul's eyes as he watched Boron's ship accelerate, aiming straight for Zorn's flagship. "I promise," he whispered. The explosion as Boron's ship impacted was blinding. Zorn's fleet scattered, crippled by the sudden assault. Paul stood frozen for a moment, the weight of Boron's sacrifice crushing down on him. Then training took over. "Helm, get us out of here, best possible speed."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.